What if I told you that some of the most dangerous muscle cars of the 1960s weren't the ones plastered on bedroom walls? Not the Mustangs, not the GTOs, not the cars everyone name drops at car shows, but the ones nobody talks about anymore. The cars that didn't scream for attention. The cars that didn't get movies, posters, or endless magazine covers. The cars that lived in the shadows yet could embarrass legends at a stoplight. Today, we're uncovering the forgotten muscle cars of the 1960s. Machines that were faster than expected, rarer than myths, and quietly erased by history. And once you see them, you'll never look at the golden age of muscle the same way again. The mid-1960s weren't just exciting. They were absolute chaos. Detroit had lost its mind. Every year, engines got bigger. Compression ratios climbed higher. Quarter-mile times dropped like stones. Marketing departments were at war. Badges became weapons. And horsepower numbers turned into bragging rights. But while the spotlight burned bright on a handful of poster cars, something strange was happening behind the scenes. Compact sedans were being weaponized. Luxury cruisers were getting dragstrip hearts. Family cars were quietly turning into street predators. And it all starts with a car nobody ever sees coming. The Ford Falcon was never meant to be exciting. It was designed to be sensible, affordable, invisible. A car you bought because it made sense, not because it made your heart race. But in 1964, Ford broke its own rules. They took the Falcon and gave it teeth. The Falcon Sprint wasn't loud about what it was. At a glance, it still looked like a commuter car. But underneath, everything changed. Bucket seats replaced bench seats. The suspension was tightened. The steering sharpened. The stance dropped just enough to look purposeful. And then came the moment that mattered. By 1965, Ford slid a 289 cubic inch V8 under that modest hood. Not just any 289, the same small block architecture powering early Mustangs and Fairlanes. Two-barrel carburetor. Over 9-to-1 compression. Right around 200 horsepower. On paper, that didn't sound insane. But paper doesn't tell the whole story. Because this car weighed just about 2,800 pounds. That meant the Falcon Sprint had a power-to-weight ratio that punched far above its class. Strengthened unibody construction kept things tight. Fairlane-sourced suspension components improved stability. And the shorter wheelbase made the car feel alive, twitchy in the best way. This wasn't just quick for a Falcon. It was quick, period. Drivers who expected an economy car got something else entirely. A machine that leapt off the line, pulled hard through the mid-range, and carved corners with confidence. And then it was gone. Because in 1964, Ford detonated a cultural bomb, the Mustang. Overnight, the Falcon Sprint became irrelevant. Why buy a sleeper when you could buy a symbol? By 1965, the Sprint was quietly dropped. Only a few thousand were ever built. Today, it's rarer than comparable Mustangs and nearly forgotten, which is exactly why it matters. Say the word Charger and your mind jumps to something big, aggressive, wide, B-body muscle with a snarling grille. But Dodge's first Charger wasn't a monster. It was a dart. In 1965, Dodge did something bold and almost immediately buried it. They released the Dart Charger GT, a limited-run experiment, a test balloon, a name that history nearly erased. Every example came finished in pale yellow. Every interior was black. No choices, no compromises. Charger badging appeared where it had never been before. Mag-style wheels hinted that this wasn't a normal Dart. Subtle trim changes separated it from the crowd if you knew where to look. But the real secret was hidden beneath the hood. The Charger 273 V8, a high-compression LA small block. 4-barrel carburetor, 10.5-to-1 compression, 235 horsepower, in a compact A-body weighing roughly 3,000 pounds. That combination mattered. The Dart Charger GT didn't feel heavy. Felt eager. Torsion bar front suspension kept the nose planted. Leaf springs in the rear delivered predictable launches. The short wheelbase made it nimble, almost playful. This was a driver's muscle car before that phrase existed. So why did it die? Because the Charger name meant nothing yet. Because Dodge didn't know how to sell it. And because 1 year later, the Charger badge would be reborn on something massive. Only 480 Dart Charger GTs were built. The very first Charger, and one of the rarest Dodges of the entire decade. AMC never fought Detroit head-on. They sidestepped. While Ford, GM, and Chrysler screamed about performance, AMC whispered about intelligence. And then they released the Marlin. The Rambler Marlin debuted in early 1965 not as a muscle car but as a personal luxury fastback. Inspired by the tarpon concept, its roofline flowed in a dramatic teardrop shape, long, swooping, unapologetically different. You couldn't confuse it with anything else on the road. Inside, the Marlin was built for adults. Real space, real comfort. A car meant for distance, not drag strips. But AMC always had a trick up its sleeve. Optional under the hood was the 327 cubic inch V8. Four-barrel carburetor, 270 horsepower, over 350 pound-feet of torque. That torque mattered. The Marlin wasn't about screaming RPMs. It was about effortless speed. Period road tests showed mid-17-second quarter-mile times, respectable for a car that looked like it belonged at a country club. This wasn't a GTO killer. It wasn't trying to be. It was something else entirely. A fastback cruiser with muscle beneath the surface. A car for buyers who didn't want to follow trends, who wanted something smarter, stranger, and more refined. Over 10,000 were sold in its shortened first year thanks to aggressive national advertising. But being different has a cost. The Marlin never quite fit the muscle narrative, and history prefers simple stories. By the mid-60s, Plymouth knew something important. Not every buyer wanted a stripped-down street brawler. Some wanted power wrapped in polish. Enter the Sport Fury. By 1965, it sat atop Plymouth's full-size lineup. Bucket seats, center console, chrome everywhere. This was a car that looked just as comfortable at a hotel entrance as it did at a stoplight. It even served as the official Indianapolis 500 pace car. But the danger was hidden, because you could order it with the 426 Street Wedge. 365 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque. Just a step below the legendary Hemi. This engine didn't shout. It surged. Motor Trend recorded 0 to 60 times just over 8 seconds. Quarter-mile passes in the low 16ths. Top speeds beyond 120 miles per hour. In a full-size family car, the Sport Fury 426 wasn't reckless. It was confident. A bridge between early factory hot rods and the brutal Hemi era that followed. Some cars don't need aggression to dominate. They simply arrive and the room goes quiet. The 1965 Chrysler 300L was the final letter car, the end of a bloodline. Built for 1 year only. Fewer than 3,000 produced. The styling was clean, formal, almost restrained. But underneath, torsion bar suspension, rigid unibody, and the 413 Golden Lion V8. 360 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque. Enough to move over 2 tons with ease. Quarter-mile times landed in the 17ths, impressive for something this refined. Inside, everything was powered. Leather, silence, authority. This wasn't a muscle car pretending to be luxury. It was luxury that happened to be fast. And when the 300L ended, an entire philosophy ended with it. This one didn't look dangerous. That was the trick. The Chevy Biscayne was basic transportation. Fleet cars, plain interiors, no flair. And then Chevrolet allowed something insane. You could order it with the L78 396. 425 horsepower, 11-to-1 compression, solid lifter cam, big Holly carb. Drop that engine into a stripped 2-door Biscayne with a 4-speed and you had a missile disguised as a company car. Only 1,838 full-size L78 Chevys were built in 1965. Most people never saw one coming. That's why they lost. Pontiac was already famous for muscle, but the 2+2 rewrote expectations. Based on the full-size Catalina, the 2+2 package added serious suspension upgrades, bucket seats, dual exhaust, and a 421 V8 as standard equipment. Check the right box and you got the 421 HO tri-power. 3 carburetors, massive torque, mid-15-second quarter miles. in a 4,100-pound car. That meant something terrifying. Full-size cars were hunting mid-size muscle and winning. Only a fraction received the HO tri-power, which makes them legends hiding in plain sight. These cars didn't fail. They were erased. Victims of timing, marketing, and history's obsession with the loudest stories. They prove something important. Muscle didn't always wear the biggest badge. It didn't always shout. And it didn't always survive. So now I want to know which one surprised you the most. Drop your pick in the comments. I read every single one. And if you love uncovering the hidden legends of American muscle, hit like, subscribe, and stay right here. Because the best stories are always the ones nobody tells.